Hey everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff. Today, we've got a little bit of a discussion video. We're talking about originality in knife design. This is something that comes up a lot, honestly. It seems like whenever a new knife is released or a new design is put on the market, there's always at least a couple of people who are like, that's a copy of this knife. That's a straight knockoff of this knife here. And I've always found those kind of statements to be a little bit ridiculous, and we're going to kind of dive into why in this video. Now, before we get started, let's address clones and copies, right? Clones and straight up copies. So, obviously, if you are pretending to make a product, like, the Microtech knives get cloned a lot. If you are not Microtech, and you are building a knife that you're putting the Microtech logo on, and you're basing it off of a Microtech design, you're trying to trick people into thinking that they're buying a Microtech, you are a scummy person / company, and knock it off. That's not fun. Knock it off, yeah, knock off, huh? Right? I do not like clones. Clones are not okay, right? They are not okay at all. I've heard a couple of excuses like, oh, they give you an opportunity to test out the design, and if you really like it, you can buy the real thing. I don't think that's a real strong argument, honestly. So yeah, I do not like clones. I've bought some clones in the past on accident when I was first getting into the hobby, and it still haunts me to this day. Second thing is copies or borrowed designs. Sometimes you'll see knives such as there's a Ganzo knife that very, very strongly resembles the Rat, except I think it's an intermediate size and it's a crossbar lock. Now, they are making it their own thing. They're not pretending to be Ontario. They're not pretending that they're selling you a Rat, but in my opinion, that's just a little bit lazy, right? It's not scummy. It's just a little bit lazy. So we're not going to be talking about examples like that in particular. We're just going to be talking more generally about why so many knives are said to be copies or rip-offs of each other. So we've got a bunch of knives laying out here on the table, and we're going to talk about a couple of these real quick. Number one, there are a lot of designers that have a very specific design language who are very recognizable. This is the CRKT fixed blade Razel, designed by John Graham. He's got a very distinctive style, right? Whenever he designs something, you can tell it was him. It just screams Graham design, right? And so it's, you look at this and you would not mistake this for anyone else. And that's awesome. And there's a lot of designers who are like this. Including, I've got a little example here, Daryl Ralph. To me, his designs are instantly recognizable all the time. Very, very cool. Others, there's like Ray Laconico. His designs are very recognizable, but they're also kind of, androgynous. But I'm not saying that necessarily as an insult. Just you guys know what I mean with Ray Laconico's designs. And so, yeah, there are designers and makers out there who are instantly recognizable by their design language, and that's awesome. And that's kind of the sign of a master, right? When you are so easily identified just by looking at your work. That's very, very cool. I think that's kind of the standard that a lot of artisans aspire to. However, then we've got a lot of knives like this CJRB Pyrite. A lot of people will say that kind of looks like a Benchmade bug out, where's my bug out? There it is. And yeah, there are some similarities, right? You might even be able to say the same thing about the TRM Neutron 2. Focus up, camera. Thank you. It's a very plain looking knife. We've seen that before, right? But I want to talk about why this seeming pattern of similarity is so prevalent, right? And so to illustrate this point, literally, we're going to be looking at some drawings that I have done in the past. So I'm an amateur artist. I draw a lot of animals and dinosaurs and stuff. This is one of my old sketchbooks. That's a Bajosaurus, a little Oviraptorid. I like to draw. I really like to draw. And as a knife enthusiast, I sometimes find myself drawing knives. I think a lot of us do, right? We just kind of, we sit down and we just kind of scribble something out, and it's all good fun. You know, it's not like we are necessarily designing a knife that we want to have made, or, you know, we're not necessarily claiming that we're going to be, you know, putting this into production or anything. It's just something fun. And that's the way my designs are, right? I'm not designing these really in hopes of them ever becoming real designs. It's just a pastime. So here's a page with a couple of knives I designed. This is a long time ago. I'm kind of a fan of this one, the Butt, the best utility task tool. And when I sit down to draw something, I look for inspiration, right? And inspiration does not equal copying. So with this knife here, you can see this is designed for utility tasks. And this blade, I designed this blade to resemble the exchangeable razor blades that, you know, a lot of tools use. But I want it to be a 14C 28N non-exchangeable blade, right? And so, you know, there's some other things I went into here, like I want the handle to be pretty long compared to the blade. That way you got a lot of control over the edge, just big choil here. But yeah, that blade right there, I designed that after a utility blade. Am I copying utility blades? No, I don't think so. You know, you just see something that works and you want to use it. This knife here, this is called the Quartz. I name a lot of my designs after geology-themed stuff. This is just kind of your basic titanium frame lock type of thing. I think it's a good-looking knife. And this one here on the bottom, this is the Cortar, which is Spanish meaning to cut. And if any of you that know my channel, you know that I love Bowie knives. And this is inspired by a Bowie knife, right? A Bowie knife is a historical design. They've been around forever. I think they look sexy AF. And I've just always loved the idea of folding Bowie knives. And so that's what I based this knife on. Again, I'm not really copying anything in particular, but I am looking at something that already exists and designing around that. Let's go ahead and see what else I've got in here. Oh, that's a pretty cool looking Deinonychus, if I do say so myself. Back when I was experimenting with markers, which I don't do anymore. Oh, there's another good marker one. Little pterosaurs. Little Dimorphodon. Let's go ahead. There's one design in here in particular I'm looking for. There we go. This was also from my marker era. So this here, I called this the Predator X. Predator X, the name comes from the species of pliosaur, Pliosaurus funkii. It's a huge pliosaur discovered in the UK, and for a long time, it was just referred to as Predator X before any official name was given to it. It was later named Pliosaurus funkii. But I designed this knife after that, and I kind of wanted this to look like a pliosaur, which I think I've got a pliosaur. In fact, I think I drew, yeah. There's a drawing of Predator X as it would have appeared in life. And so I wanted to give this kind of that long look. I want the blade to kind of look like the head. The clip here I designed to look after, it resemble the tail, or not the tail, the flippers. And so, yeah, you look at this knife, and honestly, there's a lot out there that looks like this, right? It's not super unique, I don't think, but I think it looks good, right? Next, this is a work knife I designed, and this one here actually I'm pretty proud of, because this is the Archosaur, and this is something that I designed based on what I would want as the perfect, like, beat it up type of knife. I love this like big belly, kind of straight clip point blade, roomy handle, completely neutral, a big choil, thumb stud action, big flat grind, a back lock, maybe a triad lock would be cool. Reversible clip, a wire clip. But yeah, so that's a knife I'm actually pretty proud of. I like that one quite a bit. And I think there's one or two others in this notebook that I want to show off. Oh, yeah, I'll show this off. Sometimes I just sit and doodle, right? And so as I sit and doodle, you know, I draw a bunch of different things. There's a horny toad. This is a Chezowosaurus, a Diabloceratops. There's a the hip structure of a theropod. But I also just draw like little knife designs here and there. And these aren't really like this one right here. That looks almost identical to the Tactile Knife Co. Bear. You know, kind of unintentional, but you know, it might have been a subconscious thing. I might have just been thinking about that knife and not really knowing it. This one up here, this is actually a version of a knife I did design called a Chrysoberyl, which I don't think I have a picture of it, or I don't think I have got the paper for it anymore, but it's kind of a fun little knife. And then this one up here kind of reminds me of a Medford. Again, I wasn't necessarily trying to draw a Medford, but it just kind of happened. And, oh, you guys might, I think I did a video on this a long time ago. My Chibui design, my chubby buoy. And then there's the Poseidon. Yeah, I think a lot of us like to sit down and just design knives and just draw. And of course, I'm not a professional knife designer or anything. But kind of the whole reason I wanted to make this video was because of some stuff I was doodling the other day. This is my current sketchbook. I don't have as much time to draw as I used to, so I don't like color anything anymore, or I don't draw like, yeah, I just kind of doodle between classes and stuff. Let's find what I'm looking for here. Yeah, oh, this is cool. This was me experimenting with mosasaurs because I kind of suck at drawing mosasaurs, and so I was, yeah, figuring out what makes them tick. Okay, so here's a knife I drew up just real quick. Nothing special. This is called the Rift. This is kind of my take on like a budgety button lock. I want to give it a like kind of an interesting little swoopy blade. But even this knife here kind of reminds me of something. I can't really place my finger on what it is though. I drew this one a while back. It's called the Intrusion. And I actually really like the idea behind this knife. So I want a carbon fiber inlay on the scale and on the blade that kind of continues. I think that's pretty cool. And of course the name Intrusion comes from in geology, if you have like an igneous body cut across some pre-existing layers, we call that an intrusion. You know, you've got some lava or magma, since it's not on the surface yet, cutting through the crust above it. That's an intrusion. So that's kind of the idea where this came from. You know, we've got like a little intrusion cutting through the knife. But interesting thing about this one was after I designed this, like, I don't know, just a little bit later, the Civivi Baltair came out. And they have a lot of similarities, right? Did Civivi copy me? No, absolutely not, because they were designing that knife probably, you know, for a couple of months before they announced it. And two, no one had ever seen this drawing, right? You guys are the first people to see this drawing besides me. So, you know, definitely not a copy. That is not a knife. Neither is that. And that's something I didn't finish. Here's something I designed as kind of my ideal type of like crossbar work knife. Again, I love this straight clip point blade shape. I think that's a really, really cool or very useful blade. But honestly, this kind of reminds me of something that Benchmade or Hogue could come up with, right? It's not. It's. I think it looks pretty cool, but you know, it's definitely not something that hasn't ever been seen before. Here's something I designed called the Thunderbird. Again, pretty basic little knife. I kind of think it should have a little front flipper. You can't see because it's open. Square thumb studs. That's cool. Thunder eggs are kind of awesome. This little EDC fixed blade I designed. This is called the Gabbro. Very, very fun one. I've been really getting into EDC fixed blades lately. That is an Oryx, not a knife. Here's a little slip joint, the Graben. I love having a forward finger choil on slip joints, but with this one here, I kind of took inspiration from spear point traditional knife designs, you know, kind of a Barlow type of handle, and then, you know, that very traditional spear point blade. And where's the one I'm looking for? There. I was waiting to go into an exam the other day, and I was just sitting down and I was drawing. I was like, I want to draw a bolster lock sheep's foot blade knife. And I drew this, and lo and behold, that's a Devo stout, right? That's very similar to the stout. Now, I did not set out to copy the stout. This was just kind of a subconscious type of thing, maybe because I've handled the stout and stuff, and it's a cool knife. I think I should call this design the tumbler. We tumble rocks in geology, but also a tumbler is something that you can drink alcoholic beverages out of. So there we go. A little bit of an homage to Devo knives. But yeah, nothing fancy, but someone could absolutely argue that, oh, that's a copy of the Devo stout, even though that's not what I intended to do. A lot of design, a lot of art relies on inspiration, right? As a knife reviewer, there are a lot of knives that I handle that I really, really enjoy, but I might like this knife for different reasons than I like this knife. I might prefer the lock on this one, but I like the blade on this one better, and the handles on this third one are better. If I could merge all those together, I would have something really, really awesome. And doing that as a designer is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Taking elements that you like from other designs and kind of putting them together, that's not copying. That's still designing a knife. Speaking of inspiration, I just remember there's one more little group of knives that I drew that I kind of want to show. And that's taking design from historical places. So there for a while I was into designing fixed blades. This is called the shepherd because it's a sheep's foot. This knife here, actually, this was not based off of off of historical design. I just remembered I actually based this off of a comb. Yeah, just a regular comb. I was holding the comb and I was like, this is kind of an interesting shape for a knife. So I traced it out and turned it into a knife. Yeehaw, right? But then I designed this little fixed blade called the cowpoke. And this is based off of a coffin-handled Bowie knife from back in the day, right? I made some changes. Instead of the aggressive, kind of trailing point clip, I made it a straight clip. Again, I love that blade shape, but I kept the coffin handle, and I want this to be a lot smaller. But yeah, I'm definitely taking design from something that came before. I was looking at a lot of historical Bowie knives to design this. And then just because I wanted to be a little bit crazy, I designed this knife here called the Squire, and this is based off of a certain type of medieval Italian dagger mixed with an arming sword. And I want to make it into a small knife. So there it is. And I think that's the last one. Yeah. So definitely taking inspiration from places is not the same thing as copying. And I also want to point out that innovation comes in a lot of different ways, right? Locks, for example. Dimco is known for just creating crazy locks, right? He's an innovator in that way. But, if you look at this knife, we've got a classic drop point blade and pretty classic lines for the handle, right? If this was a liner lock, a lot of people would probably say, oh, that's pretty unoriginal. But because it's got his lock on it, it's very, very cool. Same thing with Snex. This is a pretty unique looking knife, but, it's got that lock on it. A knife I've been carrying a lot recently, this is the Sincut Waxahachie. This is based off of a traditional Bowie knife, right? We've got that very classic Bowie blade, but this is its own thing. This is pretty unique and modern, right? However, look, it's got the same handle as that Snex almost. These are from kind of the same parent company, but, they're not necessarily trying to copy each other. It's just a design that people enjoy. And that's the next thing I want to talk about, and kind of the final thing. Is as a species, we figured out what works for our knives, right? Knives have been around forever, right? I made a video about this a while back. Knives have been around for 3 million years. Knives are older than our species. Think about this. We did not invent knives. Homo sapiens did not invent the knife. It's a very useful tool. It's something that has helped us to become the rulers of the planet that we are today. I know, very dramatic, but you guys know how I like to get on this channel. We have figured out what makes a good tool. We know what cuts good. We know what shapes are useful. And the thing is, too, with a lot of knives, for a long time, cultures were kind of separated. And so each culture had kind of their own unique tools, their own unique takes on different things. Knives that were kind of designed for their style of warfare, their style of agriculture, their style of living. And as we entered a more global world, a lot of these designs were being traded between cultures, right? You had people experiencing a tool for the first time, being like, hey, you know what? This actually does work, right? A great example of this is like the machete. Back in Spain, people didn't really have a need for a machete, but conquistadors come over to South America and stuff, and they've got these jungles that they got to get through, and they realize, oh, wait, look, the people here have tools that they use for clearing this brush. That's a good idea. So they, so the machete was definitely recognized as a very useful tool for that. And today, machetes are used for a wide variety of things. Clearing brush in landscaping, camping. I mean, maybe people use machetes as, well, definitely some people use machetes as offensive tools, as, means of violence. But the thing is we've generally figured out what works. And today, most people use knives for, EDC is kind of, if you're a person in the EDC community and you carry a knife, chances are you're using your knife for the same thing that millions of other people are using their knives for, right? If you're a hunter, you're using the same type of knife as a lot of your buddies, right? If you work in a specific trade that requires a specific type of knife, that's what you use. We figured out that, hey, a drop point blade and a neutral handle work really well together for basically everything. I can use this blade day to day. I can use this blade if I need to do some hunting. I can use this blade to process some wood, to do some whittling. I could even use this blade as a weapon if I needed to, right? We understand how all of that works. And so when we see a proliferation of drop point blades with neutral handles hitting the market, it's not that anyone is copying anything. It's just that works, right? Because really, it's not that complicated. What cut things really well 500 years ago still cuts things good today. What works for you in your pocket, there's an 80% chance that it will work well in the pockets of anyone else, right? Again, there are specific tasks that require specific knives. We have those knives. And so whenever I see people saying, oh, that's a copy of the Benchmade Bug Out, and I know Metal Complex he talks about this a lot on his channel, so shout out to Metal Complex. This is kind of inspired by him too. Whenever I hear people saying, oh, that knife looks like the Benchmade Bug Out, yeah, every knife looks like the Benchmade Bug Out, because the Benchmade Bug Out looks like every knife. This is a design that just works. The only people that you'll ever hear complaining about similarities in knife design are knife enthusiasts, because we're a bunch of soulless jerks. No, I'm just kidding. It's because, this is our hobby, and we recognize that pattern. As an enthusiast, we have an eye for knife design, and we can see similar elements. Regular people that use knives, they don't care. If the knife does what they need it to do, they're happy, right? And that's why, for people that aren't enthusiasts, I could give someone an Elementum, I could give them this Pyrite, I could give them a Bug Out, I could give them this knife, and that could be their only knife forever because it will do everything they need it to do, right? For us enthusiasts, we're never satisfied, so the rules don't apply to us. But the hyperfixation on things being copies is just a little bit pointless. Of course, as enthusiasts, we love to see things that are different. We love to see unique designs that have never been made before, but that doesn't necessarily translate to utility. Sometimes if you want uniqueness, you sacrifice a little bit of utility. I've got a couple of knives here that are very, very unique, that definitely stand out, but this Kershaw capsule. This is definitely a very unique knife. This is very different. There's not a whole lot out there that's like this. I'll be honest with you though, does owning this improve my EDC? No. No, it does not. This is a very fun little knife, and I do like this knife a lot for what it is, but this is not improving my day-to-day utility. The Civivi Aratra. This is a very unique knife. There's nothing else like this out there. Does that necessarily translate to utility? Not really. You can use this as a little axe, which is really fun. Or you could just use a regular axe, right? I love this knife. I'm so glad I have this knife. But does anyone need this knife? No. Absolutely not. There are other things that do it better. So, yeah, there's definitely that little bit of uniqueness versus utility. A lot of times, we like to see innovation. And innovation can be something as simple as, we're talking about inspiration. Here's the Cold Steel American Lawman, the Triad lock. It's one of the most well-loved locks in the knife world. And it's a modification to the very simple and ubiquitous backlock, right? Backlocks have been around forever, but the Dimcos decided we're going to make them better, and so they modified it. This looks just like a backlock, right? But it is a modified function. And so everything that we have today came from somewhere, right? It trickled down to us through the eons and ended up a Civivi Elementum, right? And so that's what I'm going to leave you guys with. Moral of the story, if you are someone who sees copycat design elements everywhere, maybe just stop, right? Because we all know that there are elements that are copied, but it's not because there's any shady evildoers that are wanting to rip people off. It's because humans have found out what the best shape a knife can be is, or at least something close to that. And we're going to keep making knives like that. Everything else is just added bonuses. And we should appreciate them for what they are. So that's going to be it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave it a like, comment below, and subscribe. I've been Gideon, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.